It's one of the most major surgeries a person can go through. A record number of heart transplants were performed in Scotland last year.
It's such an opportunity to change so many lives in so many ways, in the most meaningful way.
And tonight, we're going to watch one unfold.
The air ambulance flew me in. I got here about 6 a.m. and it's been a hectic day so far.
Colin Gray has been living with cardiomyopathy for 15 years. It's a condition that affects the heart's ability to pump blood around the body. Now he can barely walk 30 yards without becoming breathless, and that's only going to get worse. His only option is a transplant, and it's here at the Golden Jubilee University National Hospital where Colin's potentially life-saving surgery is about to take place. Colin, tell me a little bit about your day so far. When did it begin?
It started at 4 a.m. I got the call at my house up in Inverness. They arranged the ambulance for me, so they took me from the house to the airport, and then the air ambulance flew me in. I got here about 6 a.m. and it's been a hectic day so far.
How are you feeling about it just now?
I'm anxious, but it'll be just so glad, hopefully, once everything's over, get my life back to normal and get back out walking the dogs. I'm hoping it won't be too long a road for me.
Colin has been in this exact position once before. Just a few weeks prior, the 60-year-old was wheeled into theatre for a transplant. He woke up hours later to find out it hadn't gone ahead, as the donor heart wasn't strong enough. But this time, doctors are confident that won't happen again.
Of all the operations I do, the heart transplant is easily the biggest gain. In terms of what length of life, it's about 14 to 15 years average.
Consultant cardiac surgeon Simon Messer's been performing heart transplants for many years. He'll be leading Colin's operation.
There's a lot going on in a heart transplant way before I touch a scalpel. And that's when I get the first donor call. And actually the hardest part of that job is trying to coordinate everything together, and that's why we've got amazing transplant coordinators who do a lot of that work for us in terms of trying to tee up the flights, the donor team that go and assess the heart donor, and is also assessing the recipient.
Some of the team began their shifts almost 18 hours ago, but when they heard a heart was available for Colin, they stayed on. An organ can be moved anywhere across the UK, but time is of the essence. When a donor dies, specialists only have around 24 hours to remove the heart and transplant it into someone else. But they need to find a match. The main thing doctors look for is someone with the same blood type, but they'll also consider sex, height and age. This ambulance has transported the donor hearts all the way here to the hospital. Now it's being kept in a machine which is actually circulating blood around it until it can get up to the theatre and to Colin. Previously, hearts like this one, which have been without a blood supply for a short time, weren't thought to be suitable for transplantation. But medical developments mean they can now be used, which has increased the amount of donor hearts by around 30%.
So you may see that the heart's beating on the machine. It's not pumping blood, it's just beating, and then we assess that heart after it's been reanimated, and I would say it's been repaired during transportation, because initially that heart has had a sort of global heart attack, and over the last couple of hours it's had warm oxygenated blood through the coronary arteries to help repair the cells, and when it comes back to be transplanted, it's almost back at the time it was before declaration of death.
Now that the donor heart has safely arrived in the theatre, the team are working against the clock to get Colin put onto the heart and lung bypass machine so his heart can be removed and the transplant put in. Once Colin's heart has been taken out, the bypass machine will act in its place, keeping blood and oxygen flowing around his body.
So when I first came into surgery, that was the shot that I remember when I saw a heart transplant. The chest is open, we're on the bypass machine, but there's no heart at all within the body, nothing's pumping, and that's a little bit difficult to get your head around at first. But he's very much alive, and the reason is that because he's on the bypass machine, and that is basically an external pump that's taking blood from the veins, it gets whizzed around the pump, goes through an oxygenator which oxygenates the blood, and then returns it to the aorta, which is the big blood pipe in the body.
For the first few hours, the surgery goes smoothly. But then...
Nothing is pulling enough. Are you on bypass?
Just it keeps coming out.
I think you're on bypass yet.
Yeah.
The bypass machine keeping Colin alive suddenly stops working.
There's an echo system in there. It's primed. Bring in quickly, please.
His oxygen supply is cut off and the team has to act fast.
Stay on what you can, yeah? Yep, I'm doing what I can.
A replacement machine is brought in from another theatre and more specialists are called in.
More saline, please.
Simon tells us these kinds of situations are incredibly rare.
Equipment failure is part of the many things that can happen, and what you've got to do is be prepared for everything. And in this situation, the bypass machine shut down whilst we were on bypass. And thankfully, we're trained to deal with that if that happens. And it was a quick, swift turnaround onto another machine. But you can imagine that it was quite fraught because his body was out of blood supply for about 5 minutes. To protect his body, we'd cool the body down to 20 degrees whilst that's happening.
Come on, take 4 legs. Okay, we're off. Tell us when you're off. We're off. Thanks, ma'am. Thank you. Wait on, please. Wait on, please. Your arterial flaps are off. The venous full bypass. Okay, go your way.
Thanks to an amazing team from the perfusion department, they run the bypass machines. They managed to sort that out for us.
So I think we're under control now, yeah? Yeah. Are you happy with your top? Yeah.
Remarkably, Colin is stabilised and the donor heart begins to beat in his chest.
Pump suckers are off.
Around 6 hours after it began, the surgery is complete.
It's a huge relief to me because what actually happens on that night affects people for long term. You know, it's 5 minutes for me, it's a lifetime for somebody who has to live with the consequences of that action or inaction. You know, that pressure is daily, and you adjust to that.
It's now been a wee while since Colin had his life-changing heart transplant, so we're heading up to his home in Inverness to catch up with him and find out how he's recovering.
Colin, hello, how are you?
Yes.
How are you doing?
Hi, Colin.
How's things?
I'm not bad, thank you.
Colin spent a month in hospital following his operation. He was in intensive care for a week, but incredibly was able to get out of bed within around 36 hours.
How long was it until you really kind of noticed a change in what you physically felt able to do?
I would have said pretty much as soon as they were letting me get up and about on the ward. And it's been hard to not overdo things, and the consultant asked me to rein it in a little bit because he thought I might be trying to push too fast. But as I said to him, I just want to get back to a normal life as soon as possible, really.
During Colin's surgery, staff called his wife Colleen to tell her he'd been without oxygen for a short time. At that point, they didn't know what impacts that may have had on him.
What was it like speaking to your wife for the first time when you came around?
There was tears. Yeah.
It'd be a huge relief for the two of you.
Aye. Yeah. Yeah, as I say, it was, quite emotional, really.
You'd both been through so much leading up to that point. It must have been an incredible feeling to know that you'd come out the other side of it.
Yeah, a big relief. Yeah.
What did she say to you?
You know, she was concerned as to how I was feeling, and ideally, had the geography been different, she would have been there. Yeah, it was quite a special moment, really.
When you finally came home to Inverness, how huge of a moment was that for you?
Oh, when the ambulance driver dropped me off and I started crying and seeing the dogs and Colleen, it was, again, it was just another fantastic moment, really.
Just a few months ago, Colin struggled with light physical activity. Now he walks around 1.5 miles every day as part of his rehabilitation.
How much praise can you give to the doctors and the nurses that took such great care of you?
Oh, 12 out of 10. And just everybody was just fantastic. You know, the care was just exceptional. I couldn't have asked it to have gone any better than it did.
Throughout the process, Colin and his family were supported by transplant coordinator Jane Lockhart. She's taken care of hundreds of recipients during her 22 years in the role.
You get to know people, you get to know their families, you get to know a lot about them because they're in a very vulnerable situation, and it's good to be able to build up a nice rapport with them. But for me, the best part of it is when people come back and they say, oh, I went to my daughter's wedding, or, you know, I saw my grandchild for the first time, or, you know, even things like with Colin, I took my dogs out for a walk because that means the most to him in all of the world. Of all the things he can do is being with his wife and his dogs.
Colin is one of dozens of patients whose lives were changed or saved by a heart transplant at the Golden Jubilee in 2023. And being given a second chance at life is certainly something to celebrate. Over Christmas, 76 recipients came together to share their experiences and to thank people like Simon and Jane.
The number of heart transplants that we had last year, it was the highest in the UK. It was 40, which was the highest we've done ever in Scotland, and the first time we've ever become the most heart transplants in the UK. And our heart transplant unit was too small to cope with that.
How you getting on? Doing okay?
I'm fine.
An additional ward has now opened, so the hospital has more space to care for transplant patients. Simon says demand for transplants is on the rise, and with that comes the need for more people to donate their hearts.
These are life-changing gifts that you can leave, and they make an incredible difference to people. You can change people's lives after you have passed. Life goes on beyond your death.
Colin hopes he'll be able to take his wife to New York for her birthday later this year. But for now, he's grateful that he was able to spend Christmas at home, when at one stage, even that was uncertain.
What plans are you making for the future now?
Hopefully it's going to be whatever I want to achieve, I can do. So the world is my oyster now.
While the team at the Golden Jubilee prepare for what lies ahead, Colin is reflecting on the surreal reality that a new heart is now beating in his chest.
Do you think you would ever be interested in finding your donor's family in the future?
Definitely, yeah. Again, I've already asked the question, but the they thought that I'm not ready for that information yet. But they've said to me when the time's right, it will be a two-way thing between them telling me and the donor's family getting in touch with me if they feel they want to.
The majority of our patients are quite happy sending a letter of thanks, and in the majority of cases they maybe get a letter back from the donor family just expressing thanks at them at the news, but we don't have a lot of requests for families to meet. It's a very emotional thing.
If your donor's family were watching this piece, what would your message be to them?
Thank you, really. It's all I could think. It's only a small word, but yeah, I'm just so grateful for the opportunity. So yeah. Yeah. Yeah.